in the first case, we don't really have an organized defense strategy, a plan, as we do in most other areas. Secondly, there's nobody clearly in charge in the federal government, and our commission has made recommendations about both of those. Third, as my work on this commission with Tom Daschle, Tom Ridge, and others has gone on, I've become increasingly convinced not just that we have to fear not just a biological attack from terrorists, but an outbreak, naturally, of an infectious disease epidemic. 100 years ago, we had the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918, killed at least 50 million people, maybe 100 million in 15 months. If another one of those broke out today, we just don't have the vaccine to deal with it. And therefore, I think the major priority we ought to have is to have our government and the private sector cooperate and invest big in developing a universal flu vaccine. We can do it.
Senator Daschle, what are some of the other recommendations that you guys make?
Well, I think the most important recommendation is what Joe just was talking about, the importance of leadership and a real national plan. But advanced funding, you know, businesses are an incredibly important part of our strategy here. We've got to have a public-private partnership, and the private sector has a huge role to play. But we need to send the right message to the private sector about the importance of multi-year funding, about the importance of being able to count on the federal government being a full-fledged partner. And they don't have that assurance today, and that's one of the things we're going to be talking about at the Chamber of Commerce later on today.
Actually, there was a point where I spoke with the head of security for a major institution in this country, and they raised this question about, okay, so we should have some kind of antidote for, I don't know, whatever it was at the time, anthrax. And they said, but where do we keep it? Do we keep it all in the same place? Do we distribute it to every single employee? What if there's attack and we need to get it? I mean, there's a lot of logistical questions that are involved, and you never know exactly what the situation is going to be. I mean, it just seems so insurmountable, Senator Lieberman.
Well, those are all good questions, but they all have answers. And if we've got somebody in charge and coordinating what the federal government is doing in this regard. Incidentally, we discovered that the federal government couldn't figure out how much they were spending on biodefense. It's all separated into different pots. And how can you have an effective program if that's the case? We actually recommend in our report that the vice president be designated as the person in charge of this. But once you get some leadership here, you can answer all those questions. Okay. And if you do, then we're going to be a lot better prepared not only to save lives, but as we're going to discuss at the Chamber of Commerce here in Washington today, to save a lot of our economy, because a biological terrorist attack would break confidence, hurt commerce, hurt the economy, and of course, an infectious disease outbreak that threatened the lives of millions of people would have a devastating effect on our economy. So it's important to spend a little up front to prevent and be prepared to respond and minimize the damage.
That was my next question. Senator Daschle, what would it cost?
Well, we know that today we don't have the resources at any one of the levels. I think one of the things that we really have to impress upon policymakers is that this isn't just a federal challenge. We need first responders. We need a plan at the local level. We need a plan at the state level. What we do know is we're spending approximately 1/2 of the cost of one aircraft carrier, in spite of the fact that pandemics and these outbreaks have cost more lives in the last 100 years than all the wars put together. Okay. So the imbalance between conventional defense and biodefense is something we have to address.